Hi, I'm John Little, and this is the ShockCast for Friday, February 23rd, 2018. I saw evidence of three great catastrophes this week, and they should start alarm bells ringing in all of our minds. Interest rates, Hezbollah and Iran are challenging Israel, and their hard hearts in our churches. The last one is the most important, but you'll understand the first one better, and for the second, you won't understand the significance unless you've read Ezekiel's fire. And you need to read Ezekiel's fire. I'm going to give an overview of the importance of those three catastrophes, and I hope that you'll pay attention to them. They won't be fixed, but they can be avoided. I spend a lot of time chewing over what I should write about. But I'm often not sure what will appear on the page until I sit down to write. In fact, what appears is often different than what was intended. I've been a writer for longer than some of you have been alive, and my writing often takes on a life of its own. In fact, as I write this, I'm not exactly sure how this will turn out. It just will, as God wills. As I said in the intro, there are three things that concern me this week. Interest rates, Hezbollah and Iran challenging Israel, hard hearts in our churches. I ran into the second item first, and the first item second, and the third one hit me today, Thursday, as I was writing. And I was tempted to just write about the hardness of heart that most Christians suffer from, but you need to hear about all three. Some of you are tired of my moralizing. So let's talk about interest rates. They've been low, outrageously low. That means that they're going to rise. In fact, they are going to rise a lot. The only question is when and how fast. Unfortunately, the average person can't do math, so they won't see it coming until it is too late. In fact, I'm wondering if it isn't too late already. But let me get into the problem before I start talking about timing. The problem is that people hunt for living space based on the monthly payment that they can afford. Normally, we wouldn't call that a problem, but it's when we talk about something big like an economy, that's when it gets to be a problem. I went looking for a mortgage calculator and quickly saw one, and no, I'm not looking to buy a house. This is only for educational purposes. I found one on Zillow.com, Zillow.com. There are better ones out there, but I'm in a bit of a hurry. I've cornered an idea in my head, and I want to get it written down before it escapes, and I don't want it to bite me while I'm at it. Ideas are dangerous. So let's plug in some numbers and play a bit. Let's see. Home price, $200,000. Down payment, 0%. I know. Not realistic. Just bear with me. Loan, 30 years. An outrageously long time. But anyway, 30 years. Interest rate, 4%. It's a little low. Interest rates are a little higher than this, but nevertheless, we're going to say 4%. No taxes, dues, or anything else, which is also not realistic. But again, we're trying for a demonstration here. That brings us to a payment of $955 a month. That means that if you can only afford a payment of $1,000 or less, you can afford a $200,000 house. Well, that's all well and good, but what happens if interest rate goes up to 8%, or should I say doubles the price to afford it? Or about a third, or a little bit more than a third of the value of the house. Now, let's say that you own such a home and that you want to sell it. What happens to the price of that home when interest rates go up? Well, people will still be shopping for as much of a home as they can afford, based on the monthly payment. And that means that you will need to lower the price of your home to be able to sell it. What happens if you bought a home on a variable rate mortgage? Well, that $200,000 home that you bought for $955 a month will now cost you $1,468 a month. And that presents a problem for people, since people are bad at anticipating a rise in interest rates. Do you have an extra $500 a month just lying around? No? Well, neither do I. In fact, if interest rates went from 4% to 8%, I would need to sell my house or go bankrupt if I had one. But John, why do you think that interest rates will go to 8%? Actually, I think that they will go much, much higher. Those of you who know the Carter years, as I do, know that interest rates were pushed above 16% because America lost control of her spending, as well as having kept interest rates too low for too long. There are a lot of reasons for what happened, but those were the big ones. We called it stagflation. I lived through it, and it was terrible. The difference was that America was more stable and better equipped to get through it then than now. Not today. Oh, and what would your $200,000 house be worth if interest rates were up at 16%? Less than $75,000. Think about that for a minute. If we go back to the interest rates during the Carter years, think about what your $200,000 house is going to be worth if we have to push up interest rates to save the United States economy. Don't bet that it can't happen. I personally believe that we are at the peak in housing prices for the next few decades. It is all downhill from here. And I believe that we will be lucky to be stuck with 16% interest rates. I believe it's going to be worse than that. I do not know when this will happen, but I am certain that your house will fall in value every year for the foreseeable future, and eventually it will collapse in value. By the way, for those who own bonds, the same is true. As interest rates go up, the resale value of your bonds will go down. You can always wait for maturity, but you might not be able to. Interest rates are going up. The rise in rates will collapse the economy. I personally believe that this economic collapse will be the worst in human history. Please prepare accordingly. Then on to Hezbollah and Iran challenging Israel. Hezbollah and Iran are essentially the same thing. Iran was the one that created Hezbollah, and Hezbollah takes its orders from Tehran. And they are both itching for a fight with Israel. Please understand that please understand that Iran is not a normal country as you and I think of normal countries. Iran is a country ruled by fanatics, and their fanaticism is involved in everything that they do, and their goal since 1979 has been to capture Jerusalem. I've been telling you about the elite special forces in Iran. Do you remember their name? In America, we call them Green Berets or SEAL Team 6 or whatever name that's appropriate for the branch of the armed forces in America. But in Iran, Quds Force. Quds means Jerusalem. So we should be calling Quds Force by its more accurate name, Jerusalem Force. And they've been broadcasting their intention of capturing Jerusalem for almost 40 years. What will their casus belli, or justification for war, be? The gas wells being drilled in the Mediterranean Sea. Iran, through Hezbollah, is claiming that Israel is violating Lebanese rights and on behalf of Lebanon, Iran will be attacking those wells. They have already declared their intention to do so. Will Israel sit by and let Iran do this? Of course not. Iran knows this and wants Israel to attack them. And the longer that Israel delays in her attack on Hezbollah, the harder it will be to defeat Hezbollah. Israel must attack. She doesn't have a choice, and she cannot delay too long before doing so, and Hezbollah is ready for them to do so. Hezbollah is dug in with a horrendous number of missiles pointed at Israel's heart. The destruction wreaked upon northern Israel will be incredible. What would I do if I were Israel? I would do my best to cut the land route between Iran and Syria, and then I would find an excuse, any excuse, to invade Syria and draw Hezbollah fighters out of Lebanon where I could kill them more easily. Unfortunately, Hezbollah would still use their missiles on Israel, and cutting the land route between Iran and Syria is not out of the question. What will Israel do? Feed as many weapons as possible into the area between the Golan and Damascus. I would also send in raiding units into Syria to disrupt the movements of the Syrian army and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, and Hezbollah. I would assassinate anyone connected with Hezbollah. This is war, by the way, guys. I understand that this is maybe uncomfortable to listen to, but it's war. In short, I would do everything possible to weaken Hezbollah, to give myself the time to prepare a knockout blow. And I believe that they've been doing that to some extent. But this threat against Israeli gas fields in the Mediterranean means that Israel is running out of time. I believe that this will be the fulfillment of Isaiah 17. And it will be a prelude to the coming of Gog and Magog. And along with Gog and Magog comes something that I have called Ezekiel's fire. It's a book. Please read it. Trust me when I'm saying that you are not ready for Ezekiel's fire. No one is. And then we come to what I consider to be the most important topic of all. Hard hearts in our churches. It doesn't make me comfortable to talk about what I'm about to talk about. But since many of you need to hear it, I'm going to say it anyway. Not because I'm embarrassed or any kind, but it can sound like I'm whining. I'm not a whiner. Many of you know that I suffer chronic depression. And my depression is about as bad as anyone can have without being permanently disabled. In fact, without the medication that I take for it, I doubt that I would be able to function normally. And yes, I have investigated the full range of alternatives to medication. Trust me on this one. I am very thorough in my research, and I will try anything at least once. In fact, I probably have. Some alternatives do help, and I do my best to use them, but nothing helps more than medication. Or should I say, in terms of the things of this world. I deeply appreciate the goodwill that people show me when they attempt to share their thoughts on this, and I readily accept such communication. But please, understand that I've been at this for almost 40 years. The big question that often hits me is, why? Why have I had to go through this? Why should I spend every day preferring to die rather than live? Part of it is Hashimoto's disease and the time that it took to discover that I had a problem. Whenever there is a delay in diagnosis for something like this, there's always room for depression to sink its roots into your life. And once those roots have dug in deep enough, well, it's a little late to do anything about it. But you always need to try. Hypothyroidism is a gigantic cause for depression, and that's what Hashimoto's leads to. And when doctors discover that you have it, they now tend to prescribe an antidepressant along with your thyroid pill. And yes, you need it. I certainly did, but didn't know it. However, I believe that there is a much bigger reason, and it's a church reason. Our churches are full of people who do not care about others. We meet on Sunday morning, give each other a nice big smile, and think that this is enough. Those who suffer are not welcome among us. And when we find them, we make them feel like there's something wrong with them, that there's some sin involved in their life that caused them to suffer. If there is sin involved, it is assuredly the sin that dwells in the heart of those who abuse the sufferer. I've seen this in the vast majority of the churches that I have gone to. And it's an abomination. In one church, I tried to set up a kind of self-help group. Our goal was to help ourselves and take what we learned to help others. Our effort was shot down after a week by the wife of an elder. No explanation, no discussion. The irony is that the pastor's daughter was in desperate need of help and was forced to attend another church to get it. And yes, they provided such help. And that is the only church that I know of that provides such support. I sit in awe and wonder at the coldness in our churches. We are arrogant and full of pride. And when someone comes to us with a real need, the best that we can do is say, be warmed and filled, be blessed. I'm sure that none of you are like this. I doubt that you would take the time to read or listen to this if you were. Omega Shock readers are uniformly awesome. However, you might not realize that the person sitting next to you is suffering terribly. So let me give you some homework. First, Seek out those in your church who are suffering. Listen to them without offering advice. You can't listen with your mouth open, and most of those who suffer already know about their problem more so than you do. What people need is someone who will listen to them. And yes, it gets repetitive, but I can tell you that you won't die because you had to listen to the story about their cat 10 days in a row. And just because you went through a period of depression for a few weeks or months doesn't qualify you to hand out advice to those who suffer depression. Chronic conditions are a completely different animal, and your experience is less than meaningless to us. Come back to us with advice after you've suffered depression every day for 5 years straight. Then we might have something to talk about. Until then, you need to understand that you don't understand. And because we love you, we don't want you to understand. And it actually hurts to have to fight off the bad advice that keeps getting thrown at us. Yes, we know you mean well. And we try to give you some slack because of it, but it still hurts. The second thing that I want you to do is stop the attacks on antidepressants. I am so tired of hearing the incessant criticism of antidepressants. I could scream. In fact, I have screamed. For some reason, the alt-right has gotten it into their collective head that antidepressants are somehow the cause of so much that is evil out there. Sorry, but antidepressants have nothing to do with it. Zip, zero, nada. Yes, that shooter in Florida was on medication for depression. But those medications were not his problem. His problem was bad parenting. And by the time that he had gotten some good parenting, it was already too late. Antidepressants do not cause people to flip out. People flip out because they don't have self-control and never had it. In fact, we are a society that no longer understands what self-control is. So stop repeating what the morons tell you about antidepressants. They work. I'm a walking, talking example. And if you demonstrate enough care and compassion to those around you, you will probably find out that a surprising number of your friends are taking them too. But we're too scared to tell you. Please, if you call yourself a Christian, stop the abuse and reach out to the abused. And yes, that means that some of you need to repent. Okay, well, I didn't tell you the number one reason for why I suffer depression this much. And it's because it's good for me. I'm a man of many talents, even though they are not mine. By the grace of God, I do many things well and have proved it by doing those things. I have been greatly and magnificently blessed by God. But with each of my blessings comes an equally perilous danger of believing that they are mine and falling. I've often made the mistake of thinking that my talents were my own. They are not and never were. If I am better than anyone at something, it is only and solely by the grace of God. In fact, I identify strongly with this passage in 1 Corinthians. And lest I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice, that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly therefore will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distresses, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. 2 Corinthians 12, verses 7 to 10. I remember a time when I was begging the Lord for release from this plague. And then the Lord brought to mind the time when I dedicated myself to serving Him whenever, wherever, and in whatever capacity. And it was as if He was asking me if that commitment was still true. It still was. And from that moment on, I knew that this burden would be mine as long as I was still committed to serving God. And if that was the price I was willing to pay, I'm still willing. The bottom line is that there is a good reason why we suffer. You may not know the reason, but God never allows suffering in one of his children unless it is necessary. For those of you who do not suffer, please be careful to not be a source of suffering for others. As Paul says in Romans, rejoice with them that do rejoice and weep with them that weep. Be of the same mind one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits. Romans 12, verses 15 and 16. And I often think of that last line as, don't give unwanted advice, or don't think you know the answer. Well, I suffer from that myself. I often think I know the answer. Anyway, so I have a question for all of you. Are you ready to open your heart and weep with those who weep? Well, that closes out the article for today. Now we go into the research and analysis. Prepper Gal shared an awesome video, and it's titled "Passion for Christ Movement." It's not the website. It's a poem by someone named Jackie Hill Perry. And at the time in which she gave the poem, her name was Jackie Hill. So you can probably understand that she married someone named Perry. And it's called Don't Be a Jigaboo, or it's Jigaboo. Anyway, you'll see the link in the article. And it is a passionate and edgy poem, but it speaks to the heart of our church, of our churches, of us. I think that you will be blessed and benefit from watching and listening to the video. By the way, for those of you with YouTube channels, it is wrong not to provide links back to the original content. Prepper Gal provided the original, but it would have been hard to find from some of the other videos that I saw. Please, everyone, be ethical, have integrity, be honest, give credit where credit is due. Anyway, I am deeply impressed by Jackie Hill Perry. Talk about a life changed by God. And wow, I mean, between that video in 2012 and now, she got married and is now a mother. God bless you, Jackie Hill Perry. Well done, sister. And thank you, Prepper Gal. Now, here's the next one. This is a YouTube video. It's like, what you need to know about Planned Parenthood. It is one thing to suspect that foul organization is engaged in deception, but it's many times worse to see the proof laid out in such a clear way. This is less than 5.5 minutes long, and it is something that everyone needs to see. For those of you who are Americans, your taxes go to funding a murder every 90-something seconds. Don't you think that it's time to see what you are paying for? The next one is something I think that we all know. It's If I Were the Devil by Paul Harvey. This is an extremely prophetic bit of audio from Paul Harvey. His radio show, The Rest of the Story, is a part of my earliest memories. And this is a painfully accurate warning of what would be coming. Some claim that it's a prophecy, but that's just foolish talk. This was a warning, plain and simple. Now, what you will hear is not the original essay written in 1964. To the best of my knowledge, the version that Paul Harvey reads is one that he made tiny changes to in 1996, and the words in this video are as close to the 1964, or quite close to the 1964 version, that it really doesn't matter that much to show the differences. But I do provide a link in the article about what those differences are. So if you want to check out the original as you listen to this, well, click the link. So I provide the text of all this. I won't go and read all of it, but it's very interesting, and it's pointing to exactly where we sit right now. And also, by the way, Snopes did get this one right. And I did provide and actually did a search for a video, an image of an actual newspaper printout from that time, so 1964. I don't trust Snopes farther than I can throw them, but if you delve into their bio, and if you delve in their bios, you'll see what I mean. Anyway, the next one is Teacher of the Year: Why School Violence is Out of Control. Organic Prepper shared this one on his website, and it's an important reason why everything, and I mean everything, is falling apart. Yes, the fact that 17 kids lost their lives in Florida is bad. But this is about something bigger than that. This is about the destruction of our society, of our civilization. The rant that he talked about, that Organic Prepper talked about, is by Kelly Guthrie Rayleigh. And it's part of a short list of reasons why the Great Tribulation is inevitable within the lifetime of most of you. And you need to read it. So, let me repeat her words from her Facebook page. Okay, I'll be the bad guy and say that what no one else is brave enough to say but wants to say. I'll take all the criticism and attacks from everyone because you know what? I'm a teacher. I live this life daily and I wouldn't do anything else, but I also know daily I could end up in an active shooter situation. Until we as a country are willing to get serious and talk about mental health issues, lack of available care for the mental health issues, lack of discipline in the home, horrendous lack of parental support when the schools are trying to control horrible behavior at school. Oh no, my kid, what did you do to cause my kid to react that way? Lack of moral values, and yes, I'll say it, violent video games that take away all sensitivity to any compassion for others' lives, as well as reality TV that makes it commonplace for people to constantly scream up in each other's faces and not value any other person but themselves. We will have a gun problem in school until that time. Our kids don't understand the permanency of death anymore. 3 exclamation points. I grew up with guns. Everyone knows that. But you know what? My parents never supported any bad behavior from me. I was terrified of doing something bad at school, as I would have not had a life until I corrected the problem and straightened my ass out. My parents invaded my life. They knew where I was all the time. They made me have a curfew. They made me wake them up when I got home. They made me respect their rules. They had full control of their house, and at any time could and would go through every inch of my bedroom, backpack, pockets, anything. Parents, it's time to step up. Be the parent that actually gives a crap. Be the annoying mom that pries and knows what your kid is doing. Stop being their friend. They have enough friends at school. Be their parent. Being the cool mom means not a damn thing when either your kid is dead or your kid kills other people because they were allowed to have their space and privacy in your home. I'll say it again. My home was filled with guns growing up. For God's sake, my daddy was an 82nd Airborne Ranger who lost his life who lost half his face serving our country. But you know what? I never dreamed of shooting anyone with his guns. I never dreamed of taking one. I was taught to respect for human life, compassion, rules, common decency, and most of all, I was taught that until I moved out my life and bedroom wasn't mine, it was theirs, and they were going to know what was happening because they loved me and wanted the best for me. There. Say that I'm a horrible person. I didn't bring up gun control, and I will refuse to debate it with anyone. This post wasn't about gun control. This was me, loving the crap out of people and wanting the best for them. This was about my school babies and knowing that God created each one for greatness and just wanting them to reach their futures. It's about 20 years ago this year I started my teaching career. Violence was not this bad 20 years ago. Lack of compassion wasn't this bad 20 years ago. And God knows 20 years ago I wasn't afraid daily to call a parent because I knew that 9 out of 10 would cuss me out, telling me to go to hell, call the news on me, call the school board on me, or post all over Facebook about me because I called to let them know what their child chose to do at school because they are a normal kid. Those 17 lives matter. When are we going to take our own responsibility seriously? And that was Kelly Guthrie Rayleigh on her Facebook page. Hopefully, Kelly's post will stay up long enough for people to understand what is happening and why. America has become a society of children without fathers, and by definition, a child without a father is a bastard. And there's a reason why bastard has always been a foul word. A bastard grows up without self-discipline, and a bastard can have a biological father that lives with him or her, but if that father doesn't do his job, then the child will still be a bastard. Unfortunately, we are already into the second and third generation of bastards in America. I went to elementary school with bastards, and their fathers were bastards. And again, I'm not using that as a swear word. These kids were literally allowed to grow up without a single shred of discipline. They were kids without fathers. They were bastards. Worse, I'm in my 50s. And these bastards are now running the country. And I'm sorry as I say that. I don't mean to say that as a swear word. But it's true. These bastards are now running the country, the world. The rebellion that started in the 1960s is now bearing fruit in the massacre of teenagers in schools. What will be next? Then the next one, I had posted a link from Zero Hedge about a Polish law banning lies about the official Polish involvement in German war crimes in Poland. Well, Chris from Poland, who lives there, who's an excellent, awesome guy, left an excellent comment in the comment section from last week, and he actually gave some background. That law that everybody was upset about was not about the Holocaust. It was about the Germans that were accusing the Polish. We're talking, so it's really a pushback, and Chris does an excellent job. So I did actually reproduce his comment from the comment section, and I'm really glad about some of you, especially those of you living in other countries that are readers of Omega Shock and leave comments. You've really helped me see your country in ways that I haven't seen it before. And all I can say right now is God bless Poland. Thank you, Chris, for sharing that with us. There really are good reasons for why Poland is doing this. Now, the next one is about the Cinnabung eruption that happened just south of where, well, fairly south of where I'm living now. A fellow expat here in Taipei, David Dubin, I think is his name, is sounding the alarm over the eruption of Mount Cinnabung. I believe it's Indonesia. He also shows a statistical correlation between grand solar minima, which is plural for grand solar minimum, and massive volcanic activity. Of course, correlation does not indicate causation, but if any of you want to jump in on this, dive in and let us know what you find. But David isn't the only one making this connection, and ultimately it doesn't matter. Cold is cold is cold. This eruption is going to lower temperatures around the world. And if local crops don't do well, you will have a problem getting enough to eat. David is sounding the alarm. I leave it up to you to follow or not. Well, CNN is at it again. I'm looking at some of the articles that have popped up over what CNN has been doing to publicly shame and harass people, and then involve themselves dishonestly in some of the dialogue, in trying to prompt teenagers and give them questions of what they're supposed to do. This is not good. CNN is showing themselves to be corrupt and dishonest. These guys are just, well, as John Swinton said, he called journalists and journalism intellectual prostitution. And CNN is proving that in spades. Shame on you, CNN. Shame on you. Okay. Now this next one is the one that really got me started. I saw this just by happenstance. The title, it's actually an article from The Independent, a British newspaper. And it says, and the title is, "The drugs do work. Antidepressants should be given to 1 million more Britons largest ever review claims. Here's my direct response to the article. We live in an evil world, and I believe it to be the #1 reason for the dramatic rise in depression. During a less evil time, the 1960s, the average sufferer of depression didn't start to have symptoms until they were in their 40s. Now depression starts at 14. I have battled depression since I was a teenager, for almost 40 years. And I wouldn't wish what I suffer on my worst enemy. Unfortunately, my worst enemy does suffer horribly, which is probably why that person became what she is. The point is that you can get relief. There is no need to suffer more than you need to. Not everyone can take antidepressants. And those antidepressants might not solve everything, but they can help a lot. Those of you who do not suffer depression should count yourself as fantastically blessed. You have no idea how bad depression is and what it can do to you. And it makes me incredibly angry that there are many who are not depressed who abuse those who are. For anyone to abuse someone who suffers, well, it's an abomination in the eyes of God. I know that people are just repeating what other fools have told them. But I can tell you that God is angry with those who add suffering to those who suffer. It is an abomination to him. My hope is that God will give you the grace to repent and undo the damage that you have done, if you have sinned in this way. And one way to stop the incredible injury that you might be doing is to stop claiming that antidepressants are bad for you, and that suicide is an incredibly selfish thing to do. Don't get me started on that. If you experience the daily and unending pain and suffering that people with depression go through, I guarantee you that you would long to die, that you would want to die. And there would be times when you would seek for opportunities to die. There are people in your church who are suffering. What are you doing to help? And no, empty platitudes and foolish suggestions aren't help. Helping requires time and willingness to listen, to bear the terrible burdens of others. If you can't do that, then please keep your mouth closed until you can. Now let's move on to a more catastrophic but happier topic. Steve St. Angelo gave an interview, I think it was Financial Survival Network. Okay, sorry, it's not here. SRS Rocco, the nickname for Steve St. Angelo, understands energy. He gets it. He also understands that we just do not have alternatives to oil. We've tried alternatives, and we are still trying, but it's not working. Maybe something someday will work, but right now, nothing. My thought on this is that God meant for this to happen. It boxes Satan in. It puts him right where God wants him. The beast system will run out of oil right when it needs it most. And I find that to be interesting. How about you? Now, here's another one, and this, all I can say is wow. Bravo stars have to sign an STD clause. I can't believe it. This is depraved, and it's an example of how far we have fallen as a civilization. An American TV show has to have participants in the show sign an STD clause, a sexually transmitted disease clause. America calls itself Christian? Don't make me laugh. Now, I just saw this today, and this was an interesting one. Man slams car into Middlesex hospital entrance, sets himself on fire, records it live on Facebook. This is from Hartford, Connecticut. My first impression was that this was yet another example of demon possession. And when I read what was written in the article, it said, sources said that Elam, the last name of the guy, played guitar in a group called Baptism of Fire. I did a search. What I found was a Facebook page for Baptism of Fire. This Elam kid, who's about 27, was doing heavy metal. He was inviting the demonic, and he got what he was asking for. If you seek for demonic possession, go play in a heavy metal band. Go to heavy metal music concerts. Listen to it all day long. Eventually, you'll get what you wish for. Then there was another one, and this actually bothered me also. I saw this today as well. Infantry officer course lowers requirement for hikes. This is from, I think, Marine Times. This is a really, really, really bad sign. The Marines are lowering their standards because they can't pass enough infantry officers from their infantry officer course. If you have to do this, you have a serious problem. I'm sorry. This is very bad. And then there's this one. It's from the preparation section. From Kansas to New Zealand to Hawaii, where billionaires are buying homes to escape the apocalypse. From the Mirror Online. Peter Thiel's decision to buy a bug-out property in and to get citizenship from New Zealand, well, it hit my radar screen last week, and the Mirror has also picked it up. The thing is that they gloss over the reasons why. They just kind of wave their hand at it and talk about how strange it is. Please understand that you don't get to be a billionaire if you can't do math. Doing math is the core of understanding what's coming. Next, we've got something from the Gog and Magog section. And this is again where Israel-Iran head toward military clash over Syria, the Washington Times. Israel is being backed into a corner by Iran. Iran is playing her cards extremely well. And this has made Israel's position extremely dangerous. War is now inevitable. And it will be a very, very costly war for Israel. Make no mistake, Iran wants this war. Don't let the tone of this article fool you. Iran might not want a war just yet, but it wants a war, and it has been planning for this war for a long time. It will begin with the destruction of Hezbollah in Lebanon and Damascus in Syria. It will be the fulfillment of Isaiah 17, but it won't end there. Iran's defeat will cause her to make common cause with Russia and Turkey for an even bigger attack, Gog and Magog. All of this will devastate Israel and cost the lives of millions of Israelis. God help us. But it's going to be bad. Real bad. And then this today also came in. Russia tests new Su-57 stealth fighter over war-weary Syrian skies, Washington Times. This is a big escalation. Now, they might be just trying to test these jets against the F-22, or they might be testing these jets against Israeli air defense systems. They might be wanting to test these jets against Israeli jets. The problem is that you really don't want to see this. You don't want to see a big commitment by Russia in Syria. And it's a big step towards Gog and Magog, a very big step. The Gog and Magog alliance isn't ready to form. It's just in the beginning stages. But it should be clear to everyone that it's coming. Are you ready for Ezekiel's fire? Because that's what comes with Gog and Magog. Now, that's the end of the analysis and research section. But let me encourage you to go to the comments section of the previous week and look at the comments. We have some wonderful, we've got some wonderful readers, Omega Shock readers, that are leaving comments and offering their own analysis of what's going on and asking their own questions. And I'm sure that some of those questions will be questions that you might be asking yourself. So, don't be shy. Go read the comment section. I think you'll be glad you did. Anyway, this is John Little. It's Friday. And this was the ShockCast.